Hey everybody, we are at the Imp and the Ogre. My name is Paul.
And this is Ryan.
This week we're talking about the Mud Sorcerer's Tomb.
Yeah, so the Mud Sorcerer's Tomb, originally published in Dungeon Magazine number 32, came out in 1992 and was written by Mike Shel. It's for second edition D&D. It's a mid-tier level adventure, so in the 10 to 14th level range, and designed for 6 to 8 players, so lots of bodies at the table for this one.
Yeah, this adventure was inspired by the creator, Gary Gygax, and his Tomb of Horrors. Quick synopsis: so there's a bunch of sorcerers. They like to use water and earth as their elementals. They were aptly named the Mud Sorcerers. They devised a plan to remain in stasis in massive labyrinths while their minions went to work above ground. Unfortunately, they were forgotten about. It's been a long time. They're all in stasis, and people are starting to steal their things. And then we show up.
You did a good synopsis there. I wrote, "It's a tomb."
Yeah, it's a tomb.
It's a tomb. This was actually kind of funny because I'm not the world's biggest fan of the Tomb of Horrors. So when I was reading this, and they're like, "Oh, this was inspired by things like White Plume Mountain and Tomb of Horrors." Mm-hmm. I made a pre-read analysis and underlined it and said, "Not going to like it." We'll revisit that later on. But going into this, just based off of its inspirations, I will put my biases out there that it's not generally my cup of tea.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan generally of this, but anyway, we'll talk about it as we go. So,
preamble. Did you read the preamble?
Yes, I think.
The intro, there's a lot, as with a lot of these older adventures, there's usually some advice about D&Ding in them, and this adventure was no different. Though there was some interesting stuff in there that I picked up on. I'm like, oh, that's cool idea. And one of them I thought was kind of funny was that there was advice for real-time mapping. So that you should be drawing the maps out in real time as you go along. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But what I liked about it is because this adventure contains teleportation situations, the author was like, always start in the middle. And if you get teleported, don't indicate that they've been teleported until they notice that they've been teleported, and then start on a new piece of paper in the middle, and then start in the center and move outwards. And I thought that was kind of interesting / mean, because it's the idea is the players never really know
where they are
specifically. And that was interesting to me because it's not something that I think it's done that much anymore, the real-time mapping aspect of it. Usually, if you're doing it online, you have digital maps already that people are moving stuff around, or to save time at the table, you usually have it out from the get-go, you pre-draw it to save time. So I liked it. I wrote down, I'm lazy, but I really should do this just because it's a good way of keeping, giving the players a good idea of sort of the layout of the adventure without helping them not get lost.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To just draw the maps in real time, they're still confused, but they still have an idea of like, oh, we haven't been over that way yet.
Yeah, I agree. I remember reading that and laughing to myself a little bit. Yeah.
And then I guess one of the other things in there that I liked was that there was some advice on saving throws and rolling saving throws in secret that the players shouldn't know if they failed or passed. And for some of the effects, it totally makes sense, right? If it's a time-delayed poison, should you know that you're going to die in 10 rounds or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of like that. Now, I'm pretty sure I have it on record somewhere, against rolling behind screens. Like, I don't think you should flub rolls. There's arguments to be made on both sides of that.
Yep.
But I'm generally in the no. That's the whole point of having dice. Sometimes they suck and sometimes we die because of the dice. But the argument to be made for having the players not know if they succeeded the rolls or not, is really useful in some of the situations, particularly in this tomb and in general. So one of the ideas that was presented as an option to that was you just get your players to roll a bunch of dice at the start of the session.
Yeah.
And you just have that to crib off of. So whenever you need a saving throw from your players, you can just go and look at the list and then just sort of cross off that roll.
Yep.
And I like that a lot because you don't have any, I guess it takes the power out of the DM's hand. So you're not tempted to flub a roll because the numbers are already there. And it allows your players to roll the dice. Also, I thought it'd be kind of interesting because your players should know what they're for. It's like, oh, they're for saving throws as we go through. And if your player, like a player knows that they rolled a 2 for like the third roll down the list, there's that little bit of sort of suspense or fear. Like you may never get to that point, but they know that there's a saving throw somewhere in there. And I thought it'd be for tension from the player standpoint, like the character has no idea. The character doesn't have the sense of doom over them. But from a player standpoint, I think if I was on that side of the table, I'd kind of enjoy waiting for the consequences of that.
So what do you do
roll.
then? Do you are these invisible saving throws? Do you never tell them that you're using one of them?
I think that would be the thing.
Yeah.
Is you just say I need you to roll 5 d20s. I'm going to use these for saving throws. For non-obvious stuff as we
don't you think that removes some of the game though? Like what if you, I don't know, say a fog or there's a fog or something, some environmental thing that you could cue that oh, you breathe in a green gas and then they don't know that they've made a saving throw.
Well, no, for something obvious like that, I'd make my players roll. I'd let them roll that, but it would be for things like sometimes there's saving throws. I can't remember. There was one in there specifically that the players shouldn't know that there was a saving throw, right? Because it's not something obvious.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't know that anything happened, and by having them make the roll, then it gives something away that something happened.
That's true.
Right? Like say there was an illusion, and they had no idea it was an illusion, right?
I guess there are lots of illusions in this too.
So I think a lot of them had to do with illusions.
Yeah.
So I think having the list right there, it allows you to let players know from the get-go, right? Versus saying okay, everyone make a saving throw again, will saving throw or what have you, and they tell you to be okay. That automatically gives away that there was something that needed to be saved against. Yeah. And I prefer situations where
you're right. There's lots of situations that's the walls coming towards them, that kind of stuff, where there's illusions that you could use those predetermined ones that maybe a character could notice that something was wrong. But if you all of a sudden you're the wall's moving, everybody make a saving. Yeah.
So for things like that, if it's you were bitten by a snake, make a saving throw, right? I wouldn't just use one off of the list. Yeah. But the idea that sometimes the players shouldn't know what's going on or why dice are being rolled, I think that's beneficial, right?
I guess it goes along with passive perception ish, right? How much tracking do you want to do as the DM? I guess that's what it ends up being, right?
Yeah.
How realistic do you want to make things? Yeah, I agree.
So I just thought it was a good way, a good alternative to me having to roll. And I'm always a fan when I always prefer to make the players roll than me roll. So this is just a way of doing that.
The hook. You find them.
Sorry, before we get to the hook.
Yep.
This is a standard rant I have about these high-level dungeons. Again, it starts with a bunch of mumbo-jumbo about why high-level magic doesn't work here.
Yeah.
Right? And I think I don't want to reiterate everything that I complained about in the Tomb of Horrors. So if you want to hear that, you can go back and listen to that particular episode. But again, when we're dealing with higher level PCs, they got, especially magic users, they get toys, and then to make dungeons still work, they take the toys away. It's in a magical vortex that prevents you from teleporting, right? And I disagree with that. I don't need to go into all the reasons for it, but I just don't like it because this only ever happens for magic users. right? I've never come across an adventure where, you're reading the adventure and they're like, you can't use swords in this dungeon.
Right?
That's
true.
You can only use hammers because swords melt because of reasons.
Yeah.
So you can't use swords.
Yeah.
Or the air's too humid, so bowstrings don't work. Can't use bows and arrows in here. Even though realistically, if it was too humid, your bowstrings lose tension. You can't use them. But it's only ever for magic users.
It's true.
So that's
just a design flaw then, right? Like, and it just shows that magic users become more powerful the higher level they get because of their tools. But I agree, it's not fun to take away
magic breaks
toys.
The game.
Yeah.
So you can't basically, when you have to make rules to run the same type of adventure at a higher level than a lower level, then there's a problem with the game design. So either you need to tone down what magic users can do, the obvious answer, or you just live with the fact that they can do that.
It should just maybe you should need twice as much experience to be a level 2 wizard as you do to be the level 2 fighter.
That used to be the case.
Yeah, like it, right, exactly, right? Like it was slower progression because you're more powerful.
Yeah.
And anywho.
Yeah. In the second edition, I think that was still the case. It would have been the case at this point here. Anyways. Hook, sorry. I was getting...
It's not that exciting. You find a map somewhere. It says just to drop a map in a previous adventure. You're not able to decipher it. You can take it to a sage to decipher it if you need to. They will tell you that can tell you that it's a tomb of a mud sorcerer. If you want to give them a bunch of time researching it, or you want to spend a bunch of time researching the map and the mud sorcerers, you can find out a bunch of information about them, that it was an old cult, that their tombs are full of tricks and traps and various clues, and you can find out about the glyphs of power that the mud sorcerers use, what they represent, and you can get like a Google Translate to take down with you, basically, so you can read everything in their language.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. It is very much a plug and play dungeon, though. I would say that I would hope that at this point in your adventure, you have some sort of meta plot that you could weave this into. I mean, ultimately, just put a MacGuffin in there. Like, you need to get the orb of earth and water, or blah, blah, blah. Like, you just make up some reason for them to be in there.
The reason should be to retrieve the boat, and you've been tasked by one of the elemental lords.
The ship of mud and earth and sea, which is super amazing. I mean, give them a reason to go in there. I mean, you don't need to. If your players just want to go kick around in a dungeon for fun, kick around in a dungeon for fun. But if you're running this as part of an ongoing campaign, one would hope that there's more than just, let's go explore for the sake of exploring. I generally, even if I'm running, I like there to be some sort of reason tying everything together. We go here to find this, we go there to find that. We pull it all together, and now we have the super omega weapon or whatever. Right? So getting there isn't supposed to really be a challenge. The entrance is just inside a cave. You get to the back of a cave, and there's a rock wall, and on it there are 3 dwarven runes inscribed on a granite block. It's if you read Dwarven, it says treachery, sloth, and foolishness in Dwarven. But I hate this. The way to get into the dungeon is to realize that in Dwarven, one of those 3 words is an anagram of welcome. So your players need to push on the letters in order to spell welcome, and then the door opens. I hate everything about that. And not that particular puzzle itself, but I'm not a big fan of puzzles in general in adventures, mostly because puzzles aren't challenging the characters, they're challenging the players. So this might be an unpopular opinion, and I got into a bit of a disagreement on Reddit about something related to this, but I think that you kind of need to be able to have a disconnect between what you can do as a character and what you can do as a person and what your character can do.
Yeah.
Right? And when it comes to puzzles, it's 100% what you as a person can figure out.
Right.
Right? Or it just becomes, okay, make an intelligence check.
Mm-hmm.
So it either becomes a skill check roll and you figure it out, or you sit there around the table until somebody can figure it out. And I don't like that, because what if you're dealing with a orcish barbarian with a 7 intelligence, but that player happens to be the best puzzle solver at the table?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And I don't like that. Mm-hmm. Right? I would definitely be more in the case of like, okay, make an intelligence roll. Mm-hmm. And that's less fun. Mm-hmm. But the disagreement that I tend to get into with people about this type of thing, it deals with like puzzle solving and social situations.
Right.
Players feel, I don't know, people, I don't want to generalize here, but certain players feel that it should, if I can make a really good argument against something as a player at your table, it shouldn't matter if my charisma is 6.
Uh-huh.
And I'm of the opinion it's like, you as a person made a really strong argument. Can Ugg the dwarf make said, argument as eloquently, well, he smells like feces and is picking his nose in front of the king, right? Mm-hmm. Like, that's the issue that I have, right? And for whatever reason, we always get into arguments about this, is that people seem to have no problem using their real life skills for social or intelligence based activities, but it's not like I ever expect my players to go climb a wall before their character climbs a wall. Right? So in a lot of cases, it's like my character can do whatever physical things their character sheet says, and they can do whatever intelligence or social things that I can do.
Yeah.
And that bugs me.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's a good point. I agree.
So from a design standpoint, either you make this a skill challenge, just like any other skill challenge. Are you strong enough to lift the rock, hard enough to figure it out? Or you just make it a challenge to overcome. Right? So instead of making it a puzzle, you say, you can see the door, it's across a 15-foot ravine.
Yeah.
Then you're putting a challenge in front of the party. Your players can try to come up with a solution to it. So, okay, we're going to get some sticks, we're going to build a bridge. Okay, make a craft check to see how strong it is, and blah, 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 blah. Right? Like, you do it that way. But for something like this, people find it really unsatisfying if they just roll. Like, why come up with a really clever puzzle when realistically if you at the table can't figure it out, but you have a wizard with a 20 intelligence who's a super genius, well, most cases, nobody at your table is a super genius. Tip of the hat to all those super geniuses that do play D&D. Right? Like, it's why I don't like puzzles.
Hey, man, I'm convinced. Yep.
Be more fun if you disagreed. We could have a fight. But,
well, I can't disagree. It's a well laid out argument, I agree. Yeah.
But anyways.
So they solve the anagram.
Theoretically, they do. I mean, the point I put in here is like, it could just derail the whole thing. If your players can't figure it out, I guess we don't go to the dungeon.
Well, what point too is like, in what game when all the people are like, we can't get it, and then you go like, well, you have an 18 intelligence, your player could probably figure it out, make a roll. Mm-hmm. That probably happens a lot as well, right?
Well, that happens. Like, I'm sure I've had that happen at my table too,
right? Like you default to like, your character's a lot smarter than you are, so they could probably figure it out.
See, and the thing is, but people never default to like, I figured it out. Be like, great, your character's dumb though.
Yeah.
Right? It's like that's the issue that I have with that, is that either you do it or you don't. Mm-hmm. Right? Because nobody ever wants to hear that you can't do something because of their character, even though that's the way it should be. Nobody has a problem with their 8 strength halfling not being able to lift a boulder up.
Yeah.
but me telling them that they're 8 charisma, no ranks in any social skills dwarf can't convince the guard to let him out.
Yeah.
Even though they've just made a really convincing, logical debate with me. Like, I don't care if in real life you're the captain of your debate club.
Yeah.
You're not playing somebody who's the captain of your debate club. If you want to play someone who's the captain of your debate club, make you.
Yeah.
Right? But you're not you, you're your character.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The game isn't about you, it's about your character. Anyways, that's my complaint with that, is if you're
play the game.
Play the game. If you're not playing the game, then you're playing something else. Which, once again, play it however you want. Like, there's no wrong way to do it, but then you're not playing pure
You're not
D&D,
playing the role-playing game.
Yeah. Anyways, that's enough. Sorry.
All right, so we're in.
It's a giant dungeon with lots
really
of rooms.
Giant dungeon.
So I didn't talk about everything. I kind of just made notes about what I thought was cool or cruel or...
I will say, before we get into the things that we liked about the dungeon, I like the theme of the dungeon is consistent, that most of the doors and traps are these massive stone faces on the wall, and each of them requires, you can reach into the ear, reach into the nose, reach into the mouth. Like, they all have the same puzzle, but different ways to solve them. So you can be fooled by the previous puzzle, like, oh, we got that one by reaching into the nostril and turning the key. You reach into the same nostril, the next one you might get a spear to the face, right? Like, I enjoyed that the theme of the Mud Sorcerer's Tomb was consistent throughout, and that even though they were seeing the same thing, it was a different puzzle. I appreciate that as well. The consistency was there. I also, as a broad stroke, I didn't find anything in here unfair. No, I haven't noted that as well. As like, even though this is inspired by the Tomb of Horrors, the writer of this adventure gives the players an opportunity to figure things out. That it's not just an instant death. There's a chance of them being successful.
It's tough.
Yeah,
but like, I didn't think there was any challenge in here that was blatantly designed to be punishing. It's designed to be hard.
Yeah. There's maybe one instant death thing in here, but there's always there's a couple, but like there's none that are just automatic. Yeah.
Like, you open the door and you die.
There's always a save that you can make. There's lots of save or dies, but
there are always the consequence of decisions that you made.
Yeah.
It's not like you just walk into a room and it's save or die.
And you
have to choose to say open something.
Exactly. Yeah.
And usually there's warnings associated with it.
And you're given the information before coming into this place that like it was full of traps and devices. So you're at least a little more prepared coming into this, that you might die, but you could get through it. Yeah. So I agree. Yeah.
Also, there's no real time crunch on it. Like, there's no clock, which is a pro and a con, I guess. From a player standpoint, like, that means you could do one room, spend all your spells, rest.
Yeah.
Do another room, which is awful. So from a sort of a DM standpoint, maybe you want to put a clock on it. Maybe it can be a reasonable clock, like in 4 days, if you're not back with this item, so in game time, it doesn't take a month for this to happen.
You could have you could have something in there that's a timer for sure.
But built into it, the players can take as long as they want.
Yeah.
They could take 20 in every single room and check every single wall for everything.
That's true.
And there's no penalty.
I just assume that people aren't going to play the game that way. That's my naive assumption, that people are there to do it in a reasonable amount of time and aren't going to...
Well, I mean, the reasonable amount of time at the table is different from a reasonable amount of time in game.
That's what I mean, right? I wouldn't have fun playing in a game where you're sitting there being like, we take 20 to do this room. We take 20 to do this room. That wouldn't be fun for me to play. I like living on the edge a little bit with things.
Yeah, you like playing reckless and players dying. Or your character's dying, I guess is the better way to put it. But, if you're going into a death trap, having a player say, I check every wall, I check the floor, I have a 10-foot pole, I'm tapping everywhere, I take 20 all the time. That's how you would actually explore a death trap.
Yeah.
Right? If you were a team of adventurers in real life going to, if you're Indiana Jones, you're not just and just walking through whistling to yourself and you're going to pull on this, right?
You probably have hirelings to do it for you.
Well, you have time frames for it. And using Indiana Jones as an example, there's always competition.
Yeah.
Right? So I need to get here before they figure I'm here, or what's the first one? Belloc, the French guy. He's always right behind him. So when you have the time pressure on there, then it's exciting. Like if your rivals also have a map and they're going to be here,
True.
You can build in those types of time pressures that don't necessarily have to be super punishing, but if you take too long, well, guess what? The B team just showed up.
You could always, I guess you're right. You could create like a perceived time pressure too, where like if you took the map to the scholar, you could be like, oh, the guy could be like, interesting, another one.
Yeah.
Right? And he'd be like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, I've been studying another map that a group of adventurers brought in as well. I can tell you this right off the bat because I already did the research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
good point.
It's just something to encourage the game to go on at a reasonable clip, I guess. Any other general comments before we get into just the cool things, bad things?
Nah, let's jump into it.
I like the hallway full of crying eyes. So there's a hallway it's carved with eyes that tear up and weep, and the tears are acid. So you can get the eyes to close by like poking them, but they just open up again, or using like a bright light to do it. And what I liked about this puzzle is to progress, there's a secret door in here, but the only way you can find a secret door is you have to get the eyes to close so you can search the wall, because otherwise the wall is covered in acid that melts your hands while you're searching for secret doors. So I thought that was kind of a clever challenge. So to be able to successfully this room, you got to figure out a way to get the eyes to close to stop the acid from weeping. I think it's difficult. Like I don't think that's intuitive or easy to do. But again, you could theoretically at this level have enough hit points that if you wanted to search a section of wall and just eat the damage, you could.
Yeah. First one I have is the roof trap, where there's a cord of hair sticking out of the roof. If they tug on it, the roof will collapse. And then I think we talked about this before, but it's like the actual count of 10 in your head, so the DM counts to 10 and then the roof will collapse on them. I mean, this would be death if they're collapsed, if they do give you an opportunity to get out of the way at a penalty saving throw. That was my first one.
Yeah, the timer aspect of it, I think is kind of neat. I wonder if it'd be cool. I bet you can get them. I haven't seen them, but I bet you they exist. If you get like little egg timers, if you get like a 10-second egg timer, or
I'm sure you could get one.
A 30-second egg timer, because if you're at the table and you're just like, I pull in the hair, be like, oh, okay, and you just flip one over. So what do you guys do next? They could just watch the sand go down.
I've read things about like using timers at the table like that and not using them for anything in particular all the time, but like they go through the door and you just flip the timer. Like it doesn't mean anything, but now there's a timer going that all your players are aware of, and it might not do anything and it could just run out and be nothing. But it was like, I remember a while ago reading that like you should have timers at the table just to like instill a sense of haste or panic or like in your players.
Oh, speaking of timers, this is not really on the same topic though, but it was something I was thinking about. I was wondering about getting like a chess timer for combat, right? That like you're going back and forth because you only have the I don't know how adjustable those things are. I'm sure you could get an app or something like that. But one where you like, because speed chess is a thing that exists. Right. But for like combat, if you were just going back and forth using a timer like that to sort of instill the hectic nature of what combat would really be. Like it's not this deep, take 5 minutes, figure out the best strategic move. It's just like, click, your team's on the clock. I'm going to go attack him. You're on, and then the enemies are on the clock. And as the DM, you're like, okay, that guy's going to move there. So like just to speed it up and make it hard to always do the most optimal action, which, in combat, it's not always going to be the most optimal combat action. So I thought that was kind of an interesting idea for keeping combat moving at a reasonable clip. And that it affects like the DMs under as much of a pressure as the players are, and the players actually still have the advantage because the players have more time.
Yeah.
Because you still have to wait for your turn to come, whereas the DM's actually under more pressure because it's always going back to the DM, and the DM has to do something.
Yeah.
But I thought that was an potentially interesting use of a timer.
Yep. That would be cool.
Is it back to me? Sorry. Oh, yes, it is. The rug trap.
Yeah, that was my next one too. This is such a cool trap.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe it?
So there's this rug hanging on the wall, which depicts like a grand scene of a boat or something in the water. I can't really remember it. But the first PC that touches the rug becomes part of the rug. And so now
So they disappear, and then you can see them woven into the rug, and they're
drowning. Yeah. So you can only cast spells on it, so you can't, like, you'd have to figure out that they're drowning in the scene on the rug, and then figure out that maybe you could cast like some spell on them to water breathing or something like that. And I can't remember how you get them out of the rug at the end of it, but
it's like you gotta cast Dispel Magic.
Yeah, but it's just like such a cool trap that all of a sudden, because if no one was watching,
like
all of a sudden, oh poof, so and so's gone. It's like, then what?
Yeah, well, I'd probably make my players roll.
Yeah, like a
to
perception.
see if they even noticed.
Yeah,
like what they were doing when they disappeared. Like they noticed pretty quickly that someone disappeared, but did they notice that they touched the rug or what have you? Mm-hmm. But I thought it was just thematically interesting.
Yeah, very cool trap. The next thing I have is the mud ring that you can find
with the snake in the box.
Was it the snake? Yeah.
There's the snake in the box.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so first you put a snake in the box. So it's a box that you find in one of the rooms, and there's a talking snake. So the snake will answer 3 questions, similar to the augury spell. Okay.
Oh, I got it here. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's 2 truths. Okay. The last is always false. So whatever your 3 questions are, the last one, the snake always lies. But then it bites the person who's listening. And what I liked about it is that the description of the snake is that he talks really quietly. So
you have to lean in.
You have to lean in close enough to actually hear what the snake says. So it becomes plausible that it's easier for the snake to bite you before it disappears.
Yeah.
And then it's a save versus poison, or you fall asleep for a year.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you could do if someone failed that save and was actually asleep for a year. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. It doesn't explicitly say whether they can be woken up or if they're sort of stuck in Rip Van Winkleville. Mm-hmm. But I got a kick out of that. And then inside the box, once the snake's gone, is the mud ring.
Yeah, I didn't write down what the mud ring does. I just thought like the chance on use was very neat.
Yeah, it's got a bunch of spells that you can elemental water and earth related spells that you can use.
So if you're a caster, every time you use, like as soon as you put the ring on, you become aware of the abilities that it has. So 2% chance. So whatever that is, 1 on the 20. What is that?
1 in 20 is 5%, so less than that.
Yeah. So you get a 2% chance for casters to be automatically transported to an elemental plane, or an 8% chance for a thief using it to be plane shifted, which I thought was funny, like the difference in it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of magic items that have drawbacks. Mm-hmm. Like the abilities are useful more than they are super powerful. So there's always going to be the temptation to use it in certain situations. Yeah. But the fact that there's always that chance.
Well, you know what? It's funny, like having drawbacks to powerful magic items, because I mean, the game that I used to run for my friends, I gave the rogue, it was like a ring of Misty Step, but he had to roll every time he used it. So on like a roll of a 20, like regain charges, but he could fail, and then he'd be transported to a random location. And the chance of him to 100% go to where he wanted, he didn't use it once. He never used it. Like if you it was like a 5 or lower, you like took damage and got transported to a random spot in the map. But he like, just the risk of not doing what he wanted to do, he never used the ring. And it was like a super powerful item that he could be like popping around the room all the time with, and he was just like, nope, not worth it.
It's a good way of making powerful magic items.
There should always be like a chance of failure, I think.
Yeah, for some things, for sure. I think it allows you to give more powerful items to players at lower levels because there's the consequences to it.
Yeah.
And obviously, the more powerful the item, the more severe the consequence should be.
Absolutely.
And also take into account that, like, at this power level, right, the low teens, plane shift sucks, but it's not like they're gone forever. They're not, lost in time and space. If someone gets plane shift, you could go and find them.
You just scry them and then find out where they are.
Depending if it's a wizard, the wizard might already know plane shift. It just eats a spell slot. They always have to keep plane shift memorized in case they accidentally plane shift. It would be more of an inconvenience than anything else, but it's a neat design.
The next thing that I had was I liked that there's the room with candles, and if you lit the candles, that the smoke of the candles would outline a secret door. It was like unremarkable, but I just liked that it rewarded players for being curious, and it wasn't a negative thing. So often there's like curiosity has a negative negative reward, I guess, attached to it, like there's always a trap.
Cat.
You open you open the door, there's a trap. You open the trap, it's like you light the candle, you are lit on fire now all of a sudden. But it's just like a positive feedback experience.
Yeah, I think you need to have them both ways. You want to encourage experimentation and not always penalize it. Also, there's one general comment. I didn't actually make a specific thing in here, but the dungeon itself is full of clues.
Yeah.
Like, there's some hand-wavy explanation as to why there's clues in there, but there's lots of hints and clues and riddles in here that will make it a little less dangerous. So I didn't make note of which particular rooms have a clue to go with it, but in most of the really complicated or dangerous mechanisms, there's a clue that can help your players deal with it a little easier. There's the mosaic with the illusion. So if you step on the mosaic, player gets teleported, but there's an illusion of them being slashed and cut to pieces, and you're left as a pile of like viscera on the floor. I like that type of teleportation trap a lot more than the Tomb of Horrors teleportation trap, which just stole all your equipment and then dumped you naked outside, which, while funnier, is a lot crueler.
Yeah.
But this one, which serves as a way of separating the party without the party necessarily knowing they're separated, is very reminiscent of the Ravenloft teleportation trap, where you get your bodies get swapped with the white. It makes it look like you turn into an undead. I think this is more fun for everybody involved.
The next thing I have, I just copy and pasted the Bowl of Watery Death into my notes.
I don't know if I made note of that.
So the Bowl of Watery Death, the device looks exactly like a bowl of commanding water elementals, right down to the color, design, and magical radiation. However, when it's filled with water, the wizard must successfully save her spell or be shrunk to the size of a small ant and plunged into the center of the bowl. If salt water is poured into the bowl, the saving throw suffers a -2 penalty. The victim will drown in 1d6 plus 2 rounds unless magic is used to save him, for he cannot be physically removed from the bowl. The Bowl of Watery Death you can only escape it by means of animal growth, enlarge, or wish, and or pouring a potion of growth into the water will have the same effect.
It's brutal. It's hilarious, but brutal.
Also, if the victim drowns, death is permanent, no resurrection is possible, and even a wish spell will not work. Wow.
Wow.
Because it's just so brutal. Like, you could find this thing in there and you could be like, oh, do I know what this is? And you go, yeah, you do. You're smart enough. That looks like a bowl of commanding water elementals. And then at some point, you're going to pour water into it.
Well, at some point you'll try to use it.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't think there's any water elementals to command in this dungeon, but at some point they may want to use it.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you get the boat and then a water elemental shows up and you think you can command it. And
well, actually, it would be pretty hilarious if they sold it. And then, like, some later on, they get, like, arrested for, the Archmage died.
Murder in the second degree.
Yeah. That's a funny.
I thought it was just like a nasty one.
It's a nasty cursed item for sure. What's my next note here? I just want to make a comment that there's a lot of illusions in this dungeon, and I do think they get overused a little bit. Because by the fourth or fifth time they show up, your players are kind of going to be expecting it. I think the point I kind of was fed up is when the zombie horde, the illusory zombie horde shows up. I was like, okay, more illusions. So after a certain point, I think it loses a little bit of the oomph. And at this level, why not just make it an actual zombie horde? Right? These are 20. These are 10, 11, 13th level PCs. Just throw 30 zombies at them. Like, they can kill 30 zombies. It's not like they can't.
Yeah. True.
Like, 30 zombies is not a challenge to a 10th level fighter, let alone a party of them. So just let them have fun. I guess one thing, a general comment here, is I don't think in higher level adventures there's enough situations where your players can actually just feel overpowered.
Yeah.
Right, where you can a bunch of really low-level creatures just get thrown at them, so the wizard can just be like, fireball, 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 what? Like, they can't just be awesome. Or, the fighters holding the door against a big swarm of enemies, and they can hold it basically forever while the rest of the party's trying to fiddle with something.
Yeah, like by the time you have disintegrate, like, you don't get to disintegrate anything. It just does a bunch of damage to something. You know? Like, it'd be fun to cast it on something and be like, it turns to ash.
I just think there should be the opportunity in higher level adventures designed for higher levels for the player to just feel awesome. Because in a higher level adventure, it's basically like if you were too low of a level, you'd feel weak.
Yeah.
Right? But it's and we're getting into the weeds here, but it's basically the issue with a lot of adventures is the content is constantly leveling up with you.
True.
Right? So it's always about the optimal challenge level. It's not about you ever feeling, awesome. Which is one of the nice things about Hexcrawl Adventures, is because Hexcrawl Adventures has hard stuff everywhere. You can come back, like, the content doesn't change. Right? If you come and check out this dungeon, you're like, whoa, those hydras are too hard, let's leave. You can come back 10 levels later and be like, hey, those hydras, stab, 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 we win, right? Like, I wish that you saw that more in just general adventures, that you just occasionally got to be awesome. Like, instead of just having the minions be of an appropriate challenge level to you, like, maybe it's just a bunch of, like, skeletons.
Yeah. Like,
the necromancer is hardcore, sure, but he just has, like, a ton of skeletons, and you have to save the village from 100 skeletons. Like, cool. Anyways, that's just me complaining.
What do you got next?
I liked there's a pit trap that's under an illusory floor and has silence in it. So, like, you just disappear. So if you're not paying attention, somebody just, like, is gone effectively, and they can't yell for help because it's silenced at the bottom, so you're stuck. I thought that was a great trap that could be used almost at any level, because it doesn't have to by default be punishing, but it is very punishing without being super dangerous.
I scream. It doesn't seem like anybody can hear you.
No, you can't even hear yourself.
See a shoe fly out of the
exactly
out of the floor.
Right? Exactly. Right. It forces them to be a little bit more creative without killing them outright. So I thought that was kind of a clever usage of magical effects.
What else do you got? Because I kind of just jumped now to the final vault and the tomb.
I'm pretty close to there too. I got the ship of Earth and Sea is my next thing.
Yeah. You were very excited about this. Go ahead.
Okay. This is one of the neatest magic items that I've come across. I like it a lot. So basically, it's just a boat that can sail everywhere.
Yeah.
It sails on land. It sails on water.
Yep.
It also works like a submarine.
Yep.
So it can sail underwater and through the earth.
Yep.
So you can sail this puppy right through the wall and out of the dungeon.
I think once per week you get that ability, I think, to sail through solid things.
Yeah. So it's amazing. It's basically an artifact.
Mm-hmm.
And it's super, super neat. Also, what I liked about it is that it was gifted to the mud sorcerers by like elemental princes. And if you take it, they know that it's been stolen.
Yeah.
So at future dates, they're going to try to get it back. So it's a beautiful hook for your next adventure where, the elemental prince of, Earth is coming after his boat. And you're just being like dirt pirates. I just think it's
I like
hilarious.
also that, like, if you're using it on land, it still gives the magical effect of a wake, and like that it's parting the earth, even though it's not parting the earth. Like it just carries on like it's an actual boat.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're like in the dirt and you're pushing the dirt aside, and it's
creating swell and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
You're just sailing everywhere, and I just think again, this is one of those types of magical items that doesn't really break power levels. Right, like there's nothing that makes the dragon fight easier because you're in a boat sailing on the dirt versus being in a wagon, right? But thematically, it's just really fun.
Yeah.
That you know that your party is just going to become like pirates because you got a boat, and if players get a boat, they inevitably become pirates. But you can be pirates like.
Land pirates, water pirates, underwater pirates. Yeah.
Exactly. You're like, oh no, the authorities are chasing us in our boat. We take it up on the beach and then we keep going. So it's an amphibious boat. I just really, really made me smile.
Yeah.
What else is there? There's I thought the unique undead creature that had the strangling hair.
I have that in there. The theme they had, like, that we jumped around, there's like statues with these animal heads throughout the whole thing, and you eventually do get to fight like statues with animal heads on them.
No, I remember that. I didn't write that down at all. If you want to talk about it a bit.
I mean, I think it's just like a recurring theme. I can't remember how they're used throughout most of the dungeon, but you find these statues that have like an ox head or a cat head, and they're humanoids with the head of an animal on them.
There's this sort of a low-key Egyptian theme to all of it. Even the boat style is sort of like ancient Egyptian reed type boat.
Yeah, and then you come to they're the bodyguards of Zolo.
So I guess we never mentioned this. This is supposed to be the tome of Solo, which is one of the hierarchs.
Yeah.
And as you go through, there's tons of false tombs, like false sepulchers or whatever you want to think about it. There's just, you keep finding caskets that have a dead body in it that's not Solo, but it's supposed to be Solo. So I remember somewhere in here they talk about it's a big deal to find out that Solo is a woman because most of the the mummies are not women.
Yeah.
You can tell that right away.
Yeah.
So, whatever. Anyways, sorry.
So anyway, what you were saying is I also found that when you get to the bodyguard that has the attacking hair, that was cool.
Yeah, it strangles you.
Yeah.
Which is interesting and also problematic if you're a spellcaster.
Yeah.
Because you can't speak, so you can't cast your spells. There's I think it's in Pathfinder, there's a witch archetype that you can be, that it's all about making strangling hair. Like that's
cool.
You can make your whole build about having strangling hair.
Cool.
Which is pretty hilarious.
That's pretty cool.
What else did I have on here? The invisible poison caltrops.
Got those, yep. So the invisible caltrops, they prevent speech.
They're like everywhere.
Yep.
But again, I just think it's funny.
This is in the actual tomb of Solo, I think, where these caltrops are.
Yeah.
That was one I thought that could be like very nasty. The insect plague.
Yeah.
I thought.
Sorry, I have more to talk about the caltrops before we skip on. They're invisible poison caltrops, so they have permanent invisibility cast on them. The poison, I'm not really sure how it's still effective 800 years after it was applied.
Magic.
Because magic. But I'm just envisioning my players scooping up all of the invisible caltrops, and frankly, that's one of the most powerful magic items that they can from like use forward.
Yeah.
Because people are going to step on them. Like those are going to get used over and over and over again. We actually worked out the cost of what it would be to make permanently invisible caltrops. I don't even know. Permanency alone costs thousands of golds. So each one probably would have had invisibility cast on it and made permanent. So it's a little bonkers. Sorry to cut you off. What were you going to say?
The next thing was just that there's an insect plague trap that's triggered in one of the rooms that seemed nasty. It's hard to tell from reading, but the only problem I had with it is that they won't leave the particular room, so you could just back out and wait until the time, I think it was like 10 minutes until it just like goes away.
Yeah.
And you could carry on.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way of mitigating just the severity of the consequences. You let players run away from it.
How about were the animal urns of note to you? Any of those?
Yeah, I made note for the couple of save or die mechanics.
The severed raven head?
The raven in the burial urn was brutal. You want to talk about it?
Yeah, there's all these animal urns that are lined up in a row, different animal heads on them. I mean, you can skip all of the effects if you just choose to break all of the urns.
Yeah.
But if you open the raven urn...
There's sweet treasure in most of them.
There is, yeah. But if you open this raven urn, a raven head will attack you, and it's got one attack.
A spectral raven head or something like that?
Yeah, it has one chance, and if it hits you, you are decapitated.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah, so you don't even save against it. It rolls to hit against you.
Yep.
And if it hits, you get your head eaten. So that one I thought was not particularly fun because the players have no control over that. It's completely you rolling against their armor class. And the other save or die mechanic that I thought was not fun is there's the sarcophagus. That inside of it is a colorless, odorless, tasteless poison. So you open it, it dissipates into the water, and if you're close to it, you save or die. Right? There's a warning. I can't remember if it's written on the sarcophagus or from a hint. So you could theoretically open it from far away, and it eventually dissipates in the water. This is underneath the mud ship, I think. But players have no idea what's going on. And to me personally, if you're just like, this would be one of those situations with the pre-rolled saving throws because they have no reason to know that they just died.
True.
And then you just be like, and Steve died. What do you mean? It's like, yeah, it was poison. You failed your saving throw.
I feel so cheated as a player. You know, if you're just all of a sudden just like, Paul, your character's dead. Just be like, oh, I didn't get to do anything?
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
Nope.
You're like, just dead. You're like, what? And you're like, you're not sure. I'm like, oh.
Nobody knows.
That sucks.
Well, exactly. Like the characters would have no reason to know why you died.
Yeah.
Again, at this level, raised death, like you should have spells to bring people back. So this is getting to the point where death is more of an inconvenience than a real threat. But still, I don't think that's necessarily fun when you die for no reason. Did you make any note of Zilla? Zolo's sister? Zilla?
No.
So there's in one of the tombs, you find Mud Sorcerer in stasis, and it turns out this is Solo's sister.
They're spelled Tzolo, so it's, I don't know, however you want to pronounce that. Zolo.
Tzilla.
It's a Zilla. Who knows?
Anyways, this is when you find her, she's in magical stasis, and if you release her from magical stasis, she just attacks. She doesn't talk, she doesn't do anything, she just fights you until you kill her. And I personally didn't like this, because in the lore, quote-unquote, of what's going on in this place, is the whole point of them being in stasis is that at a certain point, they would be
woken up.
So they should be woken up, and they shouldn't just attack.
Should ask questions.
Try to figure out what's going on. So what I was thinking when I was reading this is there's no reason why she wouldn't just play along and be like, oh, we need to find my sister, and we'll resurrect her, and she'll reward you, or blah, 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 blah. She should definitely play along. I mean, she's evil, or everybody's evil in here. But I don't see a logical reason why this character would just wake up and just go like, murder spree, let's kill everybody.
Yeah.
They'd want to know, what year is it?
Yeah, or how long have I been asleep? Yeah.
Exactly. Like you want to, that type of information, I think is what would actually happen. So this should be more of a social encounter that can have more payoff later on when you finish the dungeon. But as written, it's just like, here's a wizard fight.
Yeah,
and I felt a little out of place personally. And then the last thing I have is when they, through a lot of difficulty, because it's in a really out of the way place. Again, this might be a reason why to use Scylla as a NPC, at least initially, because I don't know if the players would actually be able to find the real tomb. Like, you got to go into like the plumbing and all that type of stuff. It's very difficult to actually find the true tomb of Solo. But when you finally find her, she's dead. She's not even alive, because as the DM finds out, she no one she knew was powerful enough to actually cast the stasis spell on her, or no one in her immediate retinue was powerful enough, so she needed to get one of her mud sorcerer colleagues to do it, and they screwed her over. Yeah. They betrayed her and didn't do it properly, so she
died in whatever.
Died. So she's still like, she didn't die. She's still fully preserved or whatever, but she's dead. Yeah,
that was the last note I had. Was that through all it was, I'd feel disappointed to get to the end and not have to deal with Solo. You spend all this time. It's just like, nah, it's a nothing. I'd feel a little cheated, I think, to make it through all of it, because it would be tough. Yeah. To not get to the end. But although I would see most parties when they get on the boat and they're magically told the powers of the boat, would be like, yeah, we're good. Yeah. And just leave at that point.
It was just anticlimactic. Yeah. There's like, she's got a ton of awesome magic items. Like, if you actually find it, you cha-ching. Yeah. But it's kind of depressing. Though in the last area, there's a Golem Guardian who has an awesome sword that you have to defeat the Guardian to get the sword, because it's like carved into its hand or whatever. But on a roll of natural 20, it turns whatever it hits to stone. So it's got an automatic petrify effect, which is not quite a save or die, because you can reverse it. But I think that's kind of awesome.
That's a cool item.
It's like a Vorpal sword, but less so. More thematic. Cool. It doesn't even have like an awesome name or anything. It's just like, it's a sword that does this. It should have a neat name.
Final thoughts?
So, my initial prediction going through this is that I wasn't going to like it, because I generally don't like these types of adventures. Coming out the back end of it, I thought it was okay. Like, I of the dungeon crawly adventures that we've done, this is one of the better ones. I definitely liked it more than I thought I would. I think it's fair-ish, mostly. If I had to choose between this or Tome of Horrors, I'd run this 10 out of 10 times. Yeah. I think it's a way better. I think it's still dangerous. I think people most likely will die. Yeah. And in the situations where people die, though, it's not going to be a TPK. Yeah. Right? Like, players will probably die, but the party can always just be like, nope, we're good. We got a little bit of treasure. We're gonna leave. I think the dungeon size itself was pretty manageable. Like, it didn't feel huge, like Temple of Elemental Evil, which just went on and on and on and on. This was a reasonable amount. I don't think you could do it in one session, but you could probably clear this dungeon in a couple of sessions fairly easily. I like that the dungeon is fairly reactive. It's actually completely reactive. There's nothing that's going to come and get the PCs. Yeah. So it's dead until the PCs do something to it. So every single encounter is initiated by the players. So even though those encounters are super brutal and punishing, the party can always just fall back and recoup, which once again, like as I said at the beginning of this, might be a reason to put some sort of timer on them.
Yeah.
To encourage them to not just constantly be
taking much time.
Forever,
yeah.
Or resting constantly.
Yeah.
Anything else in here? Just the general complaint about puzzles. We didn't talk about all the puzzles, but there definitely are some that, again, depending on your party, might be more frustrating than fun. Or your characters, players is the word I'm looking for. And in general, I'm not a big fan of these types of tombs. I don't as like a standalone thing. I'm fine with smaller tombs as sort of part of the larger adventure. But I like this more than most. So if I had to run one, I'd run this one.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, if I had to pick one, it would be this one out of the ones that we've read anyway. The themes were consistent throughout it. I thought the traps were tough but manageable. It gave, at least I like this adventure because it gives the players a chance. I think the rewards justify the risk.
For sure. Yeah, that's a good point. Especially compared to the Tomb of Horrors, where like you don't really...
you're not just coming out of this with like a ton of wealth and like gems. Like, there's wealth.
You still are,
but it's like there's like really neat and cool and powerful.
The mud ring, the ship.
The boat, like there's things that could potentially change your adventure path. Like the boat could for sure, right?
I think the boat becomes the focus of the rest of the campaign.
Yeah, which is like really cool. I think that's really neat. If you're going into something that's so dangerous, that there should be something that could change the lives of the people going into it. That boat would do it. So yeah, if I was going to run one of these death dungeons, this would be the one. As always, guys, thanks for listening. If you have any suggestions or comments, you can email us at theimpandogre@gmail.com or on Twitter @theimpandogre. Next week, we are going to be talking about White Plume Mountain. Thanks for listening.
Bye.